All right, we're doing it.
So we got to fight. I threw him out of the house.
He said he shot himself, and I was in complete disbelief.
Find something that'll make you smile and laugh every day.
Seeing the mother and father holding the baby.
Enter as strangers.
Okay, welcome to Enter as Strangers podcast number 14. Today on the podcast, we have Randy Pinson. Randy, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good. To give a little intro, we've known Randy for a while. I've known him for quite a while. We met through business acquaintance years ago and have kind of done a lot of different projects and stuff together over the years. And now Randy has a year and a half now, 2 years with Rockagator.
Oh, it's been like 3.5 years now.
Oh, wow. Is it really?
Yeah, time flies.
Yeah, so Randy, you have started a outdoor brand called Rockagator, which your primary products are waterproof backpacks and stuff like that.
Right.
And we'll kind of get to that in a little bit, but just kind of knowing your story from when I met you originally years ago, you have, in my mind, a pretty interesting story about kind of how you became an entrepreneur and started doing your own thing. And that started, or at least to my knowledge, that kind of really took off with eBay. And I remember you telling a story one time that had something to do with you working at a cell phone shop.
Mm-hmm.
So what we kind of want to do is just talk to you about kind of your path of the ups and downs of entrepreneurship. You know, we want to talk, kind of your opinion on what it takes to be an entrepreneur and kind of the hard times and the good times and things like that. So where did your entrepreneurial spirit kind of happen, or did you just realize, early on that you weren't kind of a 9-to-5 office type guy?
It all started as a 9-to-5 office guy type of situation. I was managing it. This really dates me, but the name of the store was called Pagers Plus. So it was on Main Street in Bountiful. It was right across from what's across the street from it. It's just the old part,
downtown,
old downtown
Street, yeah.
Bountiful, and so we had it was kind of a basement shop. You walk through the front door and you walk down this flight of stairs, and we sold pagers and cell phones. We activated cell phones for, I think at the time it was like Voice Stream and Air Touch, I think were the two,
right?
The two cell phone carriers. Yeah. And so what happened was we were doing this business, and somehow, some way, we got roped into going out to this store out in Salt Lake called NPS. You guys have probably been out there.
Oh yeah, mm-hmm. Yeah, NPS. Yep.
And so what they do is they buy out insurance truckloads from freight carriers and from UPS and from FedEx and that kind of stuff. They'll go and inspect the trailers or whatever, and then they'll buy them out from the insurance companies, and then they'll bring it back to this warehouse and sort it. So we ended up going out to one of these auction things that they have out by the airport, where they had just put a bunch of stuff that they weren't interested in out on these pallets, and you would walk through these pallets and you'd place silent bids on the products.
Oh, wow.
And most of the stuff was just junk, but it was fun to look at, and it was fun to see, if you put a few bucks down on a pallet worth of, I don't know what, if you could get it, right? But one day we walked through there, and there was this gigantic pallet of brand new cell phones. They were like Nokia 5160s or something. The ones with the clamshell that you could interchange.
Yeah, the old snake game and all that.
So the really popular Nokia phone that everybody had, mm-hmm. and where you could interchange the faceplates. And we thought we'd hit a gold mine. We put down bid, I think, where we had paid like $25 a cell phone. And normally we were buying these phones from our distributors for like $125.
Wow.
Right.
Okay, so the way the cell phone activation business works is you get a kickback. When you activate the phone, they'll give you $250. So you buy the phone, you activate it, you get the money back from what you paid to buy the phone plus $100 or whatever is what you made when you activated the phone. So we thought, okay, we're going to skip the distributor. We're going to make $200 every time we sell a phone.
Right.
And so
How many phones were on that pallet, roughly?
There were hundreds. There were hundreds. And so we brought them back, and first customer comes in, we go pull one off the pallet, and we go start to activate it, and the person on the other line says, the person doing the activating says, sorry, this phone is locked to a region.
Oh.
So, which is another ancient thing. Phones don't get regionally locked, but it was regionally programmed to the New York City market.
Oh, so it was U.S., but it was just
we couldn't activate it in Utah. It could only be activated in the metropolitan New York area. And so, essentially, we had ourselves a pallet of paperweights, right? $25 paperweights. And that's where we kind of got introduced to the idea of eBay. It was brand new. This was back in 2000, so eBay was kind of the new kid on the block. And the guy that owned Pagers Plus, he's like, why don't you throw one of those up on eBay? And so we set up an account and kind of put things together and put the listing up for the phone. And within probably 30 minutes to an hour, we had an email from a lady in the New York City market that was asking if she could buy the phone for $125. Mm-hmm. We're like, oh, yeah, you can. And she's like, well, how many more do you have? And she goes, and we told her, and she said, well, we'll take all of them.
No way.
Just in one.
Well, they apparently whatever truck was carrying these phones was on its way to New York, and all these phones were on back order, so people needed these phones in the New York City market. And she thought she had stumbled into gold mine because she was the only one, that could get these phones. And so the light bulb went off in that moment. We realized that one man's junk is kind of another man's treasure type of thing. And so we started going back to NPS. We're like, oh, what else can we do? What else can we flip? And that's how the business got started. We just started going back and buying stuff and listing it, selling it. And
how often do these auctions take place?
Weekly.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it's been a long time. I think they do them kind of like monthly now, and it's been a long time since I've been on one of their listings. But they still have them, but the NPS wised up quite a bit. They're one of eBay's biggest customers now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they've got a pretty big eBay operation where they're actually got their own warehouse, their own listers. And
really?
They do a significant amount of money on eBay.
Yeah.
But I think 1 or 2 years of watching us walk through their doors and pilfer them, they realized that they were missing out.
So. You keep saying we. So was it?
It was.
You're still working for someone at this point?
Yeah. And so we kind of started this little side business. We called it Global Wholesale, and there was 2 investors and a primary investor. The primary investor was the guy that owned Pagers Plus, and so we did that for about a year. We actually got a warehouse out in Salt Lake. It's right off Beck Street, and we were going out. We just filled up this warehouse full of junk, and the idea was we're just gonna go crazy and start flipping all this stuff. But the other 2 guys ended up being kind of dead weight. They weren't really helping, and I was stuck out at this warehouse with all this junk, and I was overwhelmed. And in the end, as you might be aware, working sometimes with partners is difficult, and I realized it wasn't for me, and I ended up jumping ship, leaving my investment on the table, saying, you know what, this is not for me. I got to get out. But when I left, I had in my head what I knew was a winning formula. And so, it was kind of a leap of faith, because at that point I was married. We had just gotten into a house. And so I was ditching my income, and I took a week, and I said, and I started looking for jobs, and I interviewed for eBay. I was going to go out and work customer service for eBay at their call center. And they looked at my application. They said, everything looks good. You got some experience. We'll call you back in a week and let you know if you got the job. I'm like, all right, fine. And so during that week that I was waiting, I decided I'm going to try to sell stuff on eBay and see how much money I can make hourly at my house compared to what they're going to pay me hourly out in Sandy.
Right.
And it ended up, when the interviewer called me back and says, hey, you got the job. I'm like, hey, don't worry about it. I'm already making enough hourly here at the house.
And how old were you at the time?
I got 24.
Okay.
Wow. So,
do you remember what that was, hourly that you were making?
It was probably like $12 an hour.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's what they were going to pay, and I was still halfway through college. So.
Right. So, talk about for a second, like you kind of have this idea, or you've gone through this, and then you've decided to kind of branch it on your own now and do it. With now that you did the little test of a week, right? Mm-hmm. Were you? Is this kind of where you caught the bug to work for yourself, or did you kind of always have that?
I didn't always have it. I had taste. I remember setting up my first trade show booth was Farmington Festival days. Mm-hmm. When I was in high school, we set up a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle game station, and me and my cousin did it, and we ended up making a ton. We made like $300 for a day. And we thought that when we both were able to go buy our Nike Air Flights over at Foot Locker, and we thought we had died and gone to heaven. And so I got a taste of what it was like a little bit earlier, but I always kind of thought I was going to be working for someone else.
Right.
I always thought I was either going to go into broadcast journalism or go into marketing, some ad company and work for them, and I just stumbled into entrepreneurism, really.
Right.
And
like a lot of people do.
Yeah, it was more of a byproduct of something else, and I think more it was me recognizing an opportunity. I mean, that's what I usually tell people when they're thinking about being an entrepreneur. I tell them not to quit their day job, but wait for an opportunity. Keep your eyes open and see what opportunities are out there, and then when you can, jump on an opportunity and wean yourself from whatever is helping you, supplement yourself so you're not,
Right. So you started to do the eBay thing and you started to grow it, right?
Yeah.
Was it, I'm assuming that this is during a time when, obviously eBay's big or it's catching fire.
It was just catching fire.
It's just catching fire, but you had a lot of individual selling stuff. Was there a lot of businesses that were, what you consider, aside from the guy who was selling a few things out of his garage and stuff like that, was there a lot of businesses that you were aware of that were buying in bulk and just trying to flip stuff and move it that way?
At that time, no. Like big businesses had no clue what was going on. The big Toys R Us companies, the big retail chains and cell phone carriers and stuff like that, they had no idea what was going on, but back, at grassroots level, it was the Wild West of the internet.
Right.
all these small guys were figuring out, holy cow, there's gold to be dug here.
Right.
And, so I grew along with kind of this steady pace with all these other budding, eBay and internet entrepreneurs that were, grasping at, it was almost like the Oklahoma land rush a little bit, right?
Right.
People are just like, holy cow,
yeah.
Let's run for it. Let's grab all we can. And it was like that for probably 12 or 13 years before the landscape really changed.
Right.
So this initial growth, was this a pretty quick thing where you're taking a step back going, holy crap?
Literally,
crazy.
it was the amount of profit you would make. Like I would go to NPS, for example, and I'd go and buy these internet routers at $10 a piece, and I would sell them for $300 on eBay. There was just...
So your margins were good.
Massive amounts of margins. So, if you were smart and frugal, you could take all of those and go back to NPS and buy 10 times as much the next time. And so that's really how I grew. It was a really rapid growth. I went from probably, over the course of 5 years, I went from bedroom to basement to storage units to warehouse in Centerville, and then I bought a warehouse in Farmington.
Right.
And so
and that happened in the span of about 5 years. Mm-hmm. So at this point, because I know at some point you reach you're a power seller, as eBay would call it. Mm-hmm. But how far up on the ring are you?
So, yeah, by the time I had reached power seller, there were other guys that had far surpassed me.
Right.
Probably 5 years after I had started on eBay, it wasn't a secret anymore. You know, and eBay knew it, and people knew it, and eBay started gouging. Right? They're like, oh wow, we've got all these people that are becoming wealthy on our website. Let's crank up the fees.
Yeah, yeah.
Which started another movement of people moving away from eBay and running to another option. And at that point, Amazon was pretty smart. And they're like, well, let's open our doors and capture all these people that are disgruntled. And we would go to these eBay live conferences, and they used to be fun, and people were cheering. It was almost like one of those Mary Kay conventions. It was very evangelical almost, people were cheering and hugging each other. But I would say 2005 was the last one I think I went to, and it was in Chicago. And I remember the keynote speaker where the CEO got up and people were booing and throwing things, and I'm like, oh, this is the turning point for eBay. It's not the happy place anymore.
So at some point, though, if I remember hearing this correctly, you actually you went to Washington to speak on behalf of eBay.
Yeah, I can't remember when that was, but there was this was probably 10, 11 years ago. There was, the grumblings of the streamlined sales tax proposals and things like that, where the states were going to make little sellers pay sales tax and all the different tax
for selling online.
So they flew me out there to lobby for them.
Really?
Yeah. I think they flew out like 20 other sellers from around the country, and we all went to Senator Hatch's office. And
was that a weird phone call to get?
Not really.
Really?
No. I mean, what was weird was when we got out there, I think that was my first introduction to what it was like to be outside of Utah. I just thought everybody was nice, and I got to Washington, D.C., and these reporters were calling to interview me in my hotel room, and they were reporters that weren't on with what I was trying to lobby for, and they were trying to stick it to me on the phone, and I kind of froze up, and I was still young, and I was like, holy cow, this is a different world.
So before you made that transition, or before the market was making a transition over to Amazon because of what eBay was doing, you were making a pretty good living off of just eBay?
Yeah.
Right? So this is something where you were pulling down essentially a pretty decent salary. Mm-hmm. And it was just, did you have any employees at this time, or?
It was mostly me for the first few years, and then I kind of brought my brother on part-time. He'd work out in the garage and package. He'd bring his dog over, and they'd sit out in the garage and package up my stuff. And then he became full-time when we moved to our warehouse in Centerville, and then eventually, I got a few employees. It never got above 4 or 5 employees.
Right. When you were when the eBay was jacking up their rates and stuff like that, and Amazon opened their doors, as you said, were you worried at all that your income stream was going to be affected?
Of course, yeah. I mean, I think my eBay business was just a constant worry because the landscape changed so frequently. There was always something, and they would introduce like the verified rights ownership program where people like Gucci or whatever could come in and shut your listings down, and it made the landscape very volatile. So you were always worried that you were going to either get your account shut down or something like that. But when Amazon first started sending me emails and saying, hey, would you like to try to sell some stuff on our site, they actually solicited me to come over. I remember getting emails from a department that saw that I was selling video games on eBay, and they're like, hey, you should sell some of those over here. We have this program called Fulfillment by Amazon. You just send some of these into our warehouse, and we'll sell them and ship them, and send you the check. And I was really skeptical. I'm like, this can't work.
Yeah.
There's no way this is going to work. There's no way I can make money doing this. How could this be possible? That I could pay to ship product? Because, it's expensive to ship product. That I can pay to box up all this heavy stuff and send it to Amazon's warehouse. Right. They sell it, and I'm still able to make money?
Right.
No, can't happen.
But it did.
Oh, yeah, big time.
Better than Amazon. Better than eBay.
Better than eBay ever was. Yeah.
Right. So are you selling on both at this point?
Yeah. I mean, at that point, I kind of sent a few things in. I gave in, and I said, hey, here, take this box of video games, and you did a listing and all that. Yeah, I created the listing, sent them the inventory, and sure enough, it started clicking. I mean, they were selling regularly.
Right.
And I'm like, holy cow! I wonder what else could sell on Amazon. And it's not just video games. And so I start sending in some clothing items or some sunglasses, and those start clicking. And it's like Amazon selling, and I'm not doing anything. Amazon just clicking, selling, shipping.
Right. And you get a check.
And I get a check. And so
sounds all right to me.
Then it becomes a bit of math, right? You're like, okay, well, I've got a couple of things. I'm making this much money off a couple of things. What if I just keep shoving crap out the door at Amazon's warehouses, right?
Right.
And back in these days, they didn't really have a lot of the policies they have set up now, where they limit what you can send in, and they charge you extra if stuff sits there too long. So I was just sending in everything, everything I could think of. I was pushing out the door to Amazon, and it got to the point where I had a lot of inventory out.
Right.
Yeah.
So, if you don't mind telling us what your best year on Amazon, what did you bring in?
I think we did just over $1 million in sales, and it was mostly apparel. So I think my average transaction value was somewhere around $20.
Wow.
So
you were moving
a lot of clothing, a lot of stuff. Yeah.
Wow. Now, you were sourcing this stuff from anywhere you could find it, right?
At this point, two main things. Well, most of it was coming from big wholesale clubs like Sam's and Costco. At this point, I had it pretty narrowed down to those two, and I'd still buy things from companies that were liquidating. Like I remember, like Canon sunglasses, for example. I would buy out their end of run sunglasses when they were switching to new models, whatever. So I'd bring those in and sell them. But for the most part, it was stuff that was coming in, clothing. That, if, for example, you go to Costco right now, they're bringing in all the Halloween stuff.
Right.
None of the summer stuff's there anymore.
Right.
They had a ton of summer stuff. Where did it go? Right. They shove it out the back door and they sell it for 20% to liquidators.
Wow.
And that's where I buy it. So I'd go in and I'd buy all this stuff for 20% of what Costco was selling it for on their floor. And I'd throw it out to Amazon where people already know what the product is because they saw it at Costco 3 weeks ago. And they're like, oh, I wish I would have had that. And so they were just buying it. And it was pretty slick.
Yeah, that is pretty slick. Was there a learning curve for you in figuring out, I can buy stuff from Sam's Club, I can buy stuff from Costco?
Oh, yeah. I mean, really, it was all kind of desperation. I mean, we started NPS, right? And so I continued to do the NPS thing, but eventually it wasn't just me at NPS. There was they'd have every Friday you could go out there and go and buy stuff. And it used to be there was 1 or 2 guys, and then it reached the point where there was 30 waiting out there at the door before they,
Right.
And so the competition started going because, word of mouth, people figure it out. And then, they come up with new things like, okay, we're not going to sell anymore to you guys. We're going to do our own thing. And then you start to panic.
Right.
And so you go out to trade shows, and I ran into a guy from a company called liquidation.com.
Right.
And he had mentioned that they had a business that was called Liquidation B2B or something. And Overstock.com actually had a program called Overstock B2B. Before,
oh, really?
Yeah, that it's not around anymore, but I ended up buying a lot of stuff from them and a lot of stuff from Liquidation. And so that was kind of when I'm talking about, the business model kind of morphed and changed so frequently. That was a source of, I guess, if there was heartache in this business model, it was you never knew where your next batch of product was coming from. It was always an adventure.
Right.
But it was always a worry.
So you're dealing with that, but you're also dealing with the ever-changing landscape of, more competition online, and then obviously the, like what happened with eBay is changes in policy and making things, in how you can list and all that stuff. I imagine that's got to be a headache too.
Yeah, well, it was really easy at first because it was kind of the Wild West, and then, a lot of regulators start jumping in and saying, hey, wait a minute. There's these billions of dollars being sold on the internet by all these small businesses and these individuals, these sole proprietors, and we're not collecting any tax.
Right.
This is a problem, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, this is, 15, 16 years later. Oh, it's probably longer. Well, we're 18 years into it, and we're finally getting to the point where they're starting to clamp down, and it's actually going into law, where these states are now getting the authority to reach out and grab at us.
Right.
And so right now it's all coming to a head. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely is. That's for sure.
I mean, is that ultimately why you decided to get out of the Amazon thing and move in and start Rockagator?
That's not the reason primarily, but I think it's definitely something that helped push me out.
Push you over the edge a little there?
Yeah, and so that's a good transition question.
Well, before I kind of know a little bit of that story.
Okay.
So, but before we get there, what I'm just interested in is, so you're killing it on Amazon, right?
Yeah, I was killing it.
You have how many? You got 2 kids.
Mm-hmm. 3.
3 kids, and at any point, because I know your wife is a working professional as well.
Mm-hmm.
At any point, the fact that you are bringing in a pretty decent income, through an online business, working for yourself, doing things that way. Did you go through any times of, major stress or worry about, the fact that I'm sure you realized at that point that this could up and disappear or change massively, or were you always pretty confident that you'd be able to make money selling stuff online?
I was pretty naive to how quickly things could change, actually. So, when you asked me about my best year where we did over $1 million in sales on Amazon and just apparel, this was just Amazon because we were still running eBay at the time. So I mean that year we probably sold like 1.5 million.
Wow.
And that's just me and 2 other people in the warehouse.
Right.
So but at that point it was all my brain saying this is math. The more I feed Amazon, the more money I make. And so we were all in growth mode. I was taking out loans. I took out $100,000 loan and I just bought inventory.
Really?
Yeah, it was 2015. This was like the year after we just killed it. I bought the big house on the hill, the swimming pool. I had my Dodge Challenger, SRT8. I mean, things were flowing. I was a big pimp.
Vacationing.
Vacationing. in Mexico, and
Right.
I took the whole family out, all the employees and their wives, to we rented a big mansion over in Cabo, and we spent a week, and
Right.
things were going well,
Right.
and well enough where I think I was blinded by the success a little bit.
Right.
And I thought, well, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm making a ton of money. This is great. And sky's the limit, because all I have to do is just feed the beast, and
Right.
the beast will feed me.
Do you think you said you were naive
Yeah.
a lot of the way through? Do you think that naivety helped you? I mean, looking back, because a lot of times people in business, especially small businesses, you can overanalyze things, and it causes you to stall out, and it causes you to worry or whatnot. Do you think that being naive to potentially how quick things could turn served you well, because you just kept rolling with it?
Maybe
Lessen
that's
that fear a little bit, maybe.
maybe a little of that did help. Being an entrepreneur takes a certain element of having to give up on fear a little bit.
Right.
And which is strange, because I'm probably the most risk averse person that I know. I'm very worried about things. And so
It's funny you say that you're risk averse, because I wouldn't. If someone were to ask me, "Do you think Randy's risk averse?" I'd say no.
I'm very calculated about. I really, like, if I make a decision, I really have to think it over, and I don't sleep at night sometimes, because my brain is still cranking around it. And even after I make a decision, after I think about it, I still, my stomach hurts.
Right.
And so, but there's a knowledge there that tells me, well, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you have to take risk.
Right.
I know it's a fundamental ingredient to being an entrepreneur is being able to take the risk. But at the same breath, there's an internal conflict where I grew up in a household where my dad worked for the power company, and he retired from the power company.
Yeah.
And there was this check every 2 weeks, and
Yeah.
there was a house, and there was food, and
Yeah.
and it was constant. And then I'm putting myself in a situation where, it could be changed really easily in my mind, right?
Right.
But, the more I think about it, if you work for someone, you can get terminated just as easily
Just
as you
as
get
easy.
terminated,
Right.
in a business. And so really it's just how you look at the world. It's a worldview thing.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about, kind of what Eric was alluding to there a second ago, the spiral down of Amazon, how it happened, why it happened, and how that transitioned you, because I think your idea for the bag came before that.
Yeah, it did. And fortunately it did. Things were going so well on Amazon that I realized, I had extra time, and I'm like, well, wouldn't it be fun to make my own thing, and it was more of a little pet project. So, I got on Alibaba, and I started I'd been selling another brand's waterproof bags on Amazon, and they sold incredibly well. We sold
Right.
like 4,000 in a year. Bought a truckload of them from Costco, and they sold out, and I'm like, geez, I wonder how much I could make these for. And I wonder if I could sell them myself with my own brand. I guess the intangible, or the question mark was it the brand that was selling, or was it the product?
Right.
And so that was kind of the risk right there, was buying the product and doing the test to see if people were just buying it because it was a waterproof bag, or people were buying it because it was an overboard waterproof bag,
Right.
Right.
Was it brand or product? And so I did it, bought 3. I think my minimum order quantity for the backpack was like 360 units. I bought them, had them ship out. They were in good shape, and
These were just a generic.
no,
This was your
my
first
Rockagator.
Your first Rockagator
Yeah.
run. Mm-hmm. So, but this, when you're doing this, so you decided to create a brand and create a product and have some manufacturing done and get them out to you so you can see if they sell.
Yeah.
And how do they sell?
They sold great.
And then, but during this time, you're still running your Amazon business. So this is just kind of a side project,
Right.
or something to see if it works. Right. What drew you? Was it just the fact of the numbers, of the fact that you were selling waterproof bags well on Amazon that made you want to try a waterproof bag?
Yeah, I mean,
Was there any other products that you had toyed with doing
No,
that with?
that was the first one, and I think it's probably because I was more interested in that type of product than selling a T-shirt or underwear. I don't want to make underwear and sell.
That's kind of what I was getting at. I was going to ask, is because
some of the best stuff I sell are things like socks and underwear. It's like, that's
Right.
totally boring. Who wants to
Right.
become an underwear guy? Unless you're making a really cool underwear, I guess, like a G-string or something.
so you have that's what's interesting to me, is that you kind of, we spent a lot of time together at doing different shows because, you know, we both have businesses in the outdoor market, so we're always at a lot of the same shows and stuff. But in a way, you didn't necessarily choose the industry, so to speak. It kind of chose you by this happenstance. But it was an industry that you obviously, I would assume,
it seemed interesting
and you and you would like to go into.
Like, that would be fun.
Did you do any homework on the outdoor industry?
No.
None at all. To see what kind of, you know.
That's where my risk averse, I think I put limits on it. It's like, okay, if I overanalyze, if I try to figure, you know, if I spend too much time thinking about it, and really, from the time I decided I was going to do it to the time I actually got the backpacks, it was like a year and a half because I had gone through overanalyzing. I went and got a middleman that had to keep going back and forth. He took 2 trips to China, and after 2 trips, he had brought me back a prototype, and by the time that he got it back to me, and the prices were different, and I remember the price ended up being like double what I ended up paying for my first batch of bags. When he finally came out, it's like, I got to get rid of this middleman. Sorry, I'm bumping the mic. I got to get rid of this middleman and just do it.
Yeah.
And so there reaches a certain point where you have to stop over, like you said, over analyzing, and just jump into the water and test it and see how it goes.
How far into creating the Rockagator brand did the Amazon start to turn?
Like a year.
A year in? So you're doing well, you're selling, but you're not, Rockagator isn't making an income, obviously, that's going to even partially replace what Amazon's doing.
No, not even close.
So what happened with that? And kind of walk us through, you know, what that was like.
And so you described it as a spiral down Amazon, but it was more like a trap door. There was no spiral, there was no warning. It was just like, one day I'm making a ton of money, the next day I'm not.
Wow. Because of changes in policies.
Yeah, it was a policy violation on Amazon. It was the day before Thanksgiving. This is the fall that I decided that I was gonna double down and take out a $100,000 loan. I took out a $100,000 cabbage loan, and I filled my warehouse with inventory. And so I had maxed out a couple of credit cards. I think I had $60,000 on American Express, and I had $100,000 on cabbage. And I'm ready.
And you bought everything.
I am ready to have the biggest Christmas in my history, right? Because this is the year after I had the biggest year. I'm like, okay, this is back to my original equation. This is a function of math, right? The more stuff I throw out there, you know, I knew from my previous, 14 years of selling that X equals this,
right?
And so I went about it, and I took my first big risk with the loans, and I ended up getting bit.
Yeah. First time out.
The day before Thanksgiving, someone had complained to Amazon in a feedback that the Kirkland brand jacket, it was like a rain poncho, I think, or something like that. It was a fake. It said this is a fake in their feedback. And so Amazon has these algorithms where they go through, they cycle through these feedbacks, and if you get enough where customers either click the button, they have like return buttons, right? You can choose, didn't like, not what I expected, not as advertised, or inauthentic.
Right.
And so if enough people click that inauthentic button, it sends enough complaints to the Amazon Center where they'll say, okay, shut this account down and make them prove that they're not selling fake stuff.
So were they fake?
No.
They weren't fake.
No, who makes fake Costco brand clothing? It was ludicrous. It was so maddening to think this is the reason that my business is getting shut down right now, is because someone complained that a Costco jacket was a knockoff.
No previous contact from Amazon to you saying, hey, we're getting these complaints. Nothing. Just shut you down.
No. That was it. I woke up that morning and I looked at my account. It says your account has been selling activity has been suspended on your account. It had a little red flag, the red flag of death.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
So take us through your thought process on that. Did you think this is a temporary, that you can just get this taken care of?
Yeah, how panicked were you? I'd be on the phone in a heartbeat.
There's no phone to Amazon. So
it's all through.
Email.
Right. So yeah. I did what any seller in my position would do. I would write this really long, sappy email to customer support about how I've got this house and I've got a family and I've been doing this for years, and they don't care. They do not care about your sappy story, not one bit.
They don't even care because
No.
I guess you're just a drop in the bucket, but you're a revenue generator for them at the levels that you're doing, more so than a lot of people.
Right.
because of what they're making off
But at
you.
this point, Amazon is a monster.
So this wasn't an issue of policy changes, because now Amazon has made it really hard for a guy that sells like you do or you did to actually make money on Amazon.
Right, and this is where I began to realize that Amazon doesn't like gray market goods on their site.
And gray
Even
market,
though it generates tons of revenue. By gray market,
stuff
I mean,
bought in China.
No, not gray market. That's black market.
Oh.
There's black market's fake. A gray market would be liquidation, off price
Gotcha.
stuff. Stuff that isn't authorized by the distributors, right?
Right.
When I buy a pallet of Nike shoes from Costco, Nike didn't authorize me to sell those shoes, so those are gray market. They're 100% authentic, but they're not authorized to be sold there.
Right.
And so Amazon has had enough of these problems where they're saying, okay, how can we clean up the website?
Yeah.
And so
That's where brand registry came in.
yeah, brand registry, all this crazy stuff. But
you're
in a heartbeat, literally in a heartbeat, the business was closed down. I went from, I was selling on average, $3,000 in revenue a day
right.
on Amazon to nothing.
How long was your account shut down?
It was shut down for like 2.5 weeks. So I missed the entire Christmas season.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. So the day before
All
Thanksgiving.
because of
While they did what? Investigated?
Yeah, I actually hired a professional. There was a guy that used to work for Amazon, and he's like a professional mediator between sellers and Amazon. And so I paid him $3,000, and he went about mediating the negotiations between me and Amazon, sending letters back that were specifically formatted, that he knew that the bullet points were in the right places, and things that the customer service people at Amazon, they don't read the sappy stories. They want to see what you're going to do to fix the problem, or what you've already done to fix the problem.
Right.
And that's all they want to see on these emails that you send back to them. And so he knew what needed to be sent back. And so a couple weeks later, we're back online, but damage is done. The wind's out of the sails. I've got massive debt, and Christmas is, halfway over.
Oh my gosh.
And so,
because I gotta imagine there's a huge drastic drop in sales right after Christmas.
oh yeah,
Amazon.
it's just, you usually have some pretty good sales like February, like January and February and March, and then just tapers.
So this has wrecked you essentially.
It was a huge blow.
Maybe you said this. I think you said earlier in the year, maybe. But how far earlier between when you got those loans and when the trapdoor fell out?
Months.
Oh my gosh,
dude.
Months. Yeah, it was just.
This must have sent your kind of since we're a small business owner. Technically, you didn't have a lot of employees and things like that. But it must have sent your kind of personal life into crazy town mode.
Oh yeah, I was crazy town. Like I remember, my wife handled it extremely well. She was still employed and stuff, but for me, probably 85% of my identity was tied to my business. I always thought that I was my business,
Right.
And then when they take that away, it's like, oh my gosh, what is going on? Who am I? And what's going on? And I remember just shaking, sitting in there. I remember my wife wanted to watch a movie, and I was sitting down in the basement. And I was like rocking.
Yeah.
So crazy.
This is kind of the story within the story. This is really interesting, right? Because you've started a brand essentially, Rockagator.
Yeah.
And which is a totally different business than what you've been doing from the manufacturing point, and the margins and all that stuff. And while you're building this brand, which I would assume initially while Amazon was going well and you got Rockagator started,
it was a pet project.
and you were excited about it.
Yeah.
Some passion you could throw into it, I'd imagine, stuff like that. Trapdoor falls out with Amazon, and now you're like, you're probably thinking initially, how can I fix the Amazon thing?
Right.
Are you thinking at all Rockagator could be the solution?
Yes, but I knew how little of a role it played in my current financial situation to not have any realistic. I had no illusions of it taking over immediately. Like I was panicked, and I was like, how can we right this ship?
Right.
I need to right this ship. This is what makes me money and enough to pay for everything that because before I bought that house on the hill, our previous house was paid off.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Our house was paid off. We were in a nice situation, and I think we sold our house for, it was like $275,000, and we bought a $700,000 house.
Oh man. Okay. How long were you in the house before Amazon dropped?
8 months.
Oh my gosh, dude. Are you
cow.
kidding me? How long after you, tell us what happened from your lifestyle point of view after Amazon fell out. What changes had to be made?
Oh, just massive. Massive changes.
You're obviously not in the house anymore.
No, I'm not. We sold the house.
Right.
So that took about a year and a couple of months after Amazon dropped out that we were out of the house. Mm-hmm. And I think about 8 months after the bottom dropped out, even though I were back online, the sales weren't what they used to be. And I knew the writing was on the wall. We had to get out of the house, and I wasn't going to wait around. I wasn't going to wait for foreclosures or, bad things to happen. And so we put the house up on the market in September the following year. So 10 months after we put the house up on the market, and it's like, okay, let's go to the bathroom and throw up. Let's get this over with. Right.
Yeah.
So you sell the house.
Sold the house. I sold the car first. The Challenger was the first to drop out. Then the house, and laid off employees, which were family members,
right.
My younger brother and my mom and my dad.
Oh, jeez. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was traumatic. I remember having moments. I remember walking through the back of the warehouse, and I'm not a crier, but I just remember one day walking, through the back of the warehouse and just realizing that I had to fire my family, and it was like, whoa.
Oh yeah.
My throat gets tight, and I walked out. I was like, thanks for your help, guys. I'm gonna go now. And
yeah, that sucks, man.
Yeah, it was bad.
That sucks.
So that was that. And but some things fell in place for me. My parents went, had put in papers to go on a mission.
Right.
Around that time, and so they had one foot out the door anyway. So I was more worried about my younger brother, because he had been working for me for 10 years. So that was his primary income.
Right.
And so to send him packing was kind of a rough deal.
Right.
But so some good things happened. My parents had to vacate their house for a year and a half, and so we saw that as an opportunity to go in, rent something for cheap, and try to stabilize.
Right.
And so we've been there for a year and a half.
When you were going to sell the house, did you at this point think that you could build back up the Amazon thing?
Oh yeah, I thought, okay, this ship can be built back up. It's
right.
I was fooling myself that this is just math. This is the same as it's always been. And when you've been doing it that long, it's hard not to think that way.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
Because it's been working.
Yeah, right. It's,
really well.
It's really hard to retrain your brain from a habit. Business was a habit. That business.
And this is an important point, I think, is that, like, especially when you're a small business, and I'm small from the, not necessarily the standpoint of revenue, but small from the standpoint of, resources, employees, things like that. If you're not able to pivot, when things go like that, because happens a lot of time where people they keep doing the same thing for too long when the market has changed or the industry has changed, but you're trying to just keep doing what's working, which sounds like that was the situation with you.
Yeah, literally, we were talking about the pivot. That pivot has only happened months ago for me,
right?
Mentally,
right.
I think it was probably 4 or 5 months ago where I've realized, I'm not going to save. I'm not going to be able to depend upon this business long term. The writing's on the wall.
Right.
Being a small, they call it retail arbitrage, selling other people's stuff.
Right.
Fancy name. Retail arbitrage is a thing of the past. It's a dying business. It's going to be obsolete. And so I've got to rededicate my brain and my emotions and everything else to something else that's got a future.
So now let's talk about that. So you go through all this, Rockagator gets started, you're building that brand, and talk a little bit about, your experience in, if you can set aside all the chaos of the Amazon, falling out from under you. Did you find a certain level of like passion in or kind of get into the outdoor market? Because a lot meaning that as you kind of, because you didn't choose it chose you, like we said.
Yeah.
But how has that experience been for you in that market? And the only reason I kind of bring this up, it's a little bit of a tangent, but a lot of the people that listen, are obviously familiar with or have Tribe One products, and we're in the outdoor market as well. So I'm just kind of curious, because for us we chose the market, right?
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious from you sitting on the other side of the table, your standpoint of like your experience in kind of working in something that's totally different. Yeah, you're still selling stuff online, but you are trying to build a brand now. So as an entrepreneur, you've really shifted what you're doing as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, and so it does. You do have to kind of put on the you have to change your image a little bit.
Right.
It's not that I haven't been outdoorsy my whole life. I have, but I think I've taken it for granted. It's always been kind of like running in the background, on the operating system. I've always gone camping, always been in scouts, always been doing outdoorsy stuff, but it's never been part of the way I've made money.
Right.
And so now that I'm making money at it, I look at it and I'm spending a lot of time getting into the brains of people that do outdoors type
Right.
activities, and it's really been an interesting study to see
Yeah.
how my product resonates with certain. I had preconception. Is that the word I'm looking
Preconceptions
for? Of how my backpack would work and who it would sell to, and what I realized I was completely off after going and doing these trade shows.
Yeah.
You realize, okay, well, this resonates with this crowd. We went to San Diego and I'm like, this is going to resonate with this crowd, and it didn't.
Yeah, it's a slap in the face all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, the same thing with us. Our experience with that was like, we thought, we're going to sell to backpackers like crazy, but it was hunters. None of us were hunters. So let me ask you this.
Same.
Yeah, same.
I've never killed an animal with a gun, but
Do you ever feel like a little bit of a fraud sometimes?
No, I mean, if you've read the book All Marketers Are Liars, I mean, there's a certain aspect of being able to tell. I'm a storyteller. I mean, that's if you're going to run a brand, you have to be a storyteller.
Right.
Michael Jordan's shoes don't make him jump higher.
Right.
That's the
That's a
story
story
though,
they
right?
tell. Right.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and nobody questions that story. If you see an Air Jordan commercial, you get chills. They run down your arms.
Right.
It's the gospel truth. Testimony of Michael Jordan.
Right.
It's
Right.
there. I mean, and so I guess the challenge for us is to be able, even though you can't be everything to everybody, can you create the story that's going to, and it doesn't have to be a lie.
Right.
It doesn't have to be. It just doesn't have to be, a genuine story. It could be you just have to tell them how the product's going to work for them,
Right.
and get them to believe it, and then it does, and it works. I mean, I've got people that are giving me pictures now for Instagram that I've never met,
Yeah.
that believe in my product, and they love it, and they want to be part of it, and
Yeah.
it's a story, right?
Yeah.
They've bought into the story that I've
they bought
created.
into the brand.
Yeah.
Is what they bought into, the lifestyle
Right.
of the brand. What I want to know is how the hell you just keep getting all these people who know how to take amazing photography. Because even Lexi said it the other day. She's like, whoever Randy's using for his pictures, you should use that person. And I'm like, I think that's a lot of different people.
Yeah.
Right.
Uh-huh.
So I mean, a lot of your pictures with your brand in it, they're pretty phenomenal photos. Mm-hmm. I love our customers, but we don't have the greatest photographers.
Yeah, I was gonna say hunters aren't the best photographers.
No.
Yeah.
I like Andy. He'll send me one of our common colleagues will
Right.
send me pictures of him out hunting. He's got this crappy phone that I'm sure he takes hunting everywhere, so it's broken, and so the pictures always look like he's in heaven because it's foggy. And
Yeah.
and he takes a million pictures, and I feel bad because I don't post them. And Andy,
Right.
I hope you're listening to this. I don't hate you. I just hate your pictures.
Well, they can take down an elk at 400 yards, but they can't,
You can't
take a clear picture,
I mean,
right?
If they valued their cameras on their phones as much as they did their scopes, they would take amazing
Yeah.
pictures. But
Well, let's talk about that for a minute because you're not just posting anything that someone gives you, because that from a brand standpoint, that perception is super important.
Mm-hmm.
And I can say personally, you do a really good job of that, especially on Instagram. Is the photos that you put up there, they really invoke a lifestyle, a feel to them.
right, what I try to do is in the beginning I was taking lots of close-up pictures of my product, and I was posting them awesome close-up pictures,
Right.
just fancy, nice pictures. And what I found is those don't really resonate. People look at that and they're like, "Oh, it's a product. It's a product."
It's a product photo.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what I've learned with Instagram is that you kind of have to tell a story and have a product be part of it, but not necessarily have it be the primary character, So
Right.
like today's picture was a guy out in the middle of a stream, and he's got his fly rod back, and the line is all over his head, and it's back behind him out of the picture. So the guy is just involved in whatever he's doing,
Mm-hmm.
but you can see he's got the Rockagator straps over his shoulder, so you
Right.
don't even see the backpack. You just see his straps.
You just see the
but-
straps. Yeah. That's telling a story.
Right.
Like you're saying.
Right.
It's painting a picture.
And the challenging thing for me is to be able, because the product that I sell has so much crossover appeal. Like right now, I'm trying to market to Spartan racers as well. So I've
Right.
got fly fishermen and Spartan racers, completely different
Totally
demographics.
different.
And so I'm at the point where I'm like, well, do I create different Instagram accounts so I can tell two different
Okay.
stories?
Okay, so I want to talk about that because that's very interesting, and I think a lot of people that what's really weird, I don't know if you found this, but I found that the hunting market, the hunters, they're very entrepreneurial. I've through the business, I've met a lot of guys who have started something or have attempted to start something, but which, by the way, I want to know, Eric, I've seen the Spartan bag. It's a badass bag. It's your best bag, my opinion.
It is the most solid
I'd like
bag.
a smaller version of it.
Yeah, we're gonna make a smaller version,
but it's a nice bag. So, but that's something that I think in business can be a struggle, right? Because you start out, you have this picture of what you want to do, and when I'm talking from a product basically we're manufacturers. Mm-hmm. That's where we kind of fall, which what you don't realize when you start a business where you make a product is that the manufacturer is at the bottom rung. Mm-hmm. And it's, you know what I mean? You got your distributors and your wholesalers and stuff like that. But it sounds like you're running into this right now, but it's something we've always kind of struggled with. And we've had ideas of how do we do it this way? How do we market to this demographic? How do we market to that demographic? Mm-hmm. For us, it was always your backpacking and your hunter, your camper and your hunter, which there's a lot of crossover there, mm-hmm. but there is a huge segment. There's almost a political division a lot of times between those two demographics. Oh. And here we are, a brand where most of our sales are going through to hunters, but we ourselves aren't hunters, but we want to also get to the backpackers. So we're, how do we stand in the middle of that without ruffling any feathers one way or another?
It's interesting.
Which is a different problem than you're facing, but talk for a minute about how you're kind of tackling, going after different brand lifestyles.
Right now it's just strictly trade shows, like we'll hit the fly fishing festival in Salt Lake. I'm in the process of signing up for the fly fishing festival in Denver for next January, but we'll also do the hunting. We'll do the hunting show at the start of the year, and then we're going to do sportsman shows, which is kind of a crossover. Then we do adventure gear shows, which are for extreme sports, mountain bikers and hikers, and
then you got overland.
So
which you were new to this year.
Yeah, it was new, but we killed it. We did great, and I thought the product. The great thing about the product is that it has crossover appeal. The challenging thing about the product is that it has crossover appeal. And so how do you as a one-man show, as I am now, without a marketing team, market to 5 different demographics and make the story consistent? And so that's where I'm at now. I don't know if I have an answer or a remedy or a recipe for it, but that's kind of the spot I'm at.
But your advice would be to try things.
Try things, yeah. I mean, that's where you have to kind of drop the risk. I mean, and a lot of times people come into the business and it's their baby, and they're idealists, right? Mm-hmm. And I think idealists don't do well in entrepreneur.
They're stuck to their idea.
They're stuck to your idea. They're married to it for better or for worse. Mm-hmm. I mean, for Steve Jobs, that was great. He was, he was married to his idea, and it worked because he was OCD and he didn't stop, and eventually it worked for him. He was a terrible father, I just read this week. So, but but sometimes it works. Very rarely it doesn't. You have to be able to change, and you have to be able to change your mindset and change the story at a moment when necessary, right?
Right.
I mean, you started and you were like, okay, that we're for your backpack. That was your story,
right?
And then you realize, okay, now I'm a hunter.
Right.
I'm a red-blooded meat eater hunter, and this net's for you. But you don't identify with that because you're not a hunter.
Yeah.
But you've learned how to. Yeah. Obviously, you've done really well at the hunting shows for many years, and so, and probably you're starting to believe your own story a little bit. You probably are a little bit of hunter at heart at this point.
Well, that's what's funny. I don't know about you, Eric, but for me, like, I never really had an interest, or I wasn't like I was anti-hunting at all.
Right.
But I find that hunting is something that a lot of times you either grow up in or you don't.
Right.
And so, but being involved in the market for a long time,
it's like, man, I want to go hunting.
Yeah, I totally down for hunting. You know what I mean?
I'd go for a hunt at least at this point. Just take me. I'll go hiking with you and I'll help you up. Whatever.
That's what I want to do. I want to go on a hunt where I'm just there because I want to look at it from a product development standpoint.
Right.
What do these guys need? Because I understand, when we go camping and stuff on our own, that's where a lot of our ideas come from. Like, make this easier, and so, and
that's the thing is you really have to get involved. Like one of the best things I did was last June, I went to Vermont to that Spartan race. Mm-hmm. They had the guy had approached me last January to build a backpack for him. I'm like, yeah, let's do it. I think I know just what you need. And he's like, oh, you need to do this and this. And I didn't understand. And we were having this, inability to match each other's ideas. And he's like, you know what? Just fly out to Vermont, come up to the ranch. We'll get you a space. It's beautiful up there. And you can come watch these racers or these participants do the race. And so I went up there and I hiked all day with him. He didn't tell me I was going to be hiking all day. He's like, yeah, we're going to be hiking a couple miles. It was like 10 miles straight uphill.
Well, to those guys, that's a couple of miles.
Yeah, it was a brutal day. And I remember, at the end of the day, there were some people that were hypothermic. They were,
Right.
shaking underneath these tarps and others that were just the epitome of manliness that were, helping cook the rabbit that they had just skinned and
Right.
ready for dinner. And I was like, okay,
So going and doing this.
yeah, getting involved. And so you can't really, and I guess the point I'm trying to make is if you want to be in the hunting industry, you can't lean on other people's opinions because you've got the product in your brain right here and
Right.
you've got to be able to figure out yourself.
Because no one can do that better than you.
Right. You're the guy that knows your product best. You're the one, if you can jump into their circle, you're going to be the best one to figure out how it applies to them. Right?
Would you say that going and doing that, I know that was, a big business decision move because there is some potential on the dollar amount for that to be pretty good for you. But would you say that going and doing something like that, like going to Vermont and going with these people that you don't really know to experience this, it was a little bit outside of your comfort zone? Or
for sure. I mean, I'm comfortable making money when I do business trips. So I was spending, $800 to $1,000 to go out and make no money.
Right.
And just hope that I was going to get some ideas, right?
Yeah. 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 It's hard to do.
So that's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like when you go to a trade show, you want to go and you want to make some money and, make some contacts, not, make some contacts and lose some money.
Yeah.
So it was a bit of a risk outside my comfort zone.
But that's, you feel is important for an entrepreneur is to
Yeah.
get outside their comfort zone.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've got, like you're saying,
Is there a comfort zone in entrepreneurism?
No.
Have you
ever been
let me
comfortable?
turn this around. Let me become the interviewer here. Have you ever been comfortable at Tribe One? Have you ever sat back in your chair and said, I'm pretty comfortable with this. I think we're doing great and the growth is good and
No.
Or have you always been on the edge of your seat wondering where the next
Yeah.
shoe's going to drop and
Always.
Okay, yeah.
Some months are better than others,
No,
but
I don't know if you own a business if there's ever a point if you're smart that you get comfortable. I think that's one thing I learned from my last business experience is don't get comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you're right. Yep.
Well, and I think just the nature of a lot of entrepreneurs are a lot of the kind of personality where it's hard to be comfortable even if things are going well because
they're usually on to the next thing, maybe
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
even mentally in their own.
Yeah.
What's the next idea?
I mean, there's a certain element of comfort you can reach. I mean, when you got money in your bank account,
Well, yeah.
there's comfort that comes with that, right?
Sure.
But with that comfort also comes the trap of complacency, right? Mm-hmm. And so you kind of almost have to carry a pin and poke your leg with it in your pocket to say, okay, you get a new idea today, because the guy behind you is ready to take your spot as soon as you sit down and take a nap or do whatever. You have to keep innovating or coming up with something new because people have to make money, and if you're not going fast enough, someone's going to jump in front of you and take it.
Which is a challenge with building a brand.
Yeah.
Is that you have to stay relevant.
Yeah.
So that shift between what you were doing with Amazon and eBay into the brand here, like all things being equal, let's throw the dollar amount out, which I know is really hard to do. But as far as your day to day and what you do to build your brand for Rockagator and what your day to day was when you're doing Amazon and stuff like that, as far as the level of fulfillment, is there any difference to you?
It's been really difficult mentally to transition.
Right.
Like, is 4 or 5 months ago, I sit in my office and stare. I was like paralyzed. I didn't know what to do.
Right.
Like, because if in my old business model, if I was moving, if I was packaging, if I was labeling, there was money being made.
Yeah.
Now I'm not doing that anymore, and it's like, holy crap.
Right.
Am I making money? and the answer was, yes, but not as much and differently.
Different.
And so mentally transitioning from that, and I always thought, when the floor dropped out on my other business, I always thought, okay, well, I can do the same thing, but I'm going to do it with Rockagator on Amazon.
Right.
Like, I couldn't detach from Amazon, and I'm going to do it on Amazon. And so but the funny thing is it started working okay on Amazon, but I was selling my product super cheap in order to make it work on Amazon. Mm-hmm. And so that's why it was working. But as soon as I changed my business model to where, okay, I need to manage my MSRP.
Yeah.
So I don't piss off.
So you don't undercut yourself.
Myself and the people that are buying it wholesale in order to sell it retail. You know, if they go on Amazon and see that they're selling it and that I'm selling it for what they paid, then they're going to be really mad, and this business is going to blow up.
Right.
And so what I found out is Amazon is really not my primary way of making money with Rockagator.
Of course.
And that was a struggle because that's what I knew. That was my idea. It's like, okay, I'm going to build a brand. I'm going to build my own brand so I don't run into these policy problems, and I'm going to do it on Amazon. But I had to decide, do I strap my entire business to Amazon and hope for the best, or do I try to create a more traditional brand where I rely on, you know, all these different people to make and different gears to keep turning in order to make the business work, and have Amazon be a small cog in that.
Right.
So if Amazon decides, well, they're going to drop me, it's not going to kill my business.
Of course.
So that has been the biggest struggle for me is divorcing myself a little bit from the idea of being an Amazon seller. It was kind of an addiction.
Right. Now, I mean, do your visions of creating a brand, is that something that the further you go into it, the more you like the idea of?
Oh yeah, I mean,
or is it just because technically you could develop, it'd be a lot of work, but you could develop products, call it something, and get out there and sell it, and not ever really build a brand. You could create a brand name for every little thing you do.
Right.
So you can do the same thing you're doing, but not build a brand. So the further you go into doing this, I mean, is it something that you like the idea of more and more?
Yeah, I mean, it's fulfilling as you start seeing, you know, fans, you know, latch onto it. You know, in the beginning, it's very discouraging because no one wants to latch onto it. No, I mean, when you're the new guy on the block, no one wants to hear your story. No one cares about your brand. They, you know, all they care about is how cheap it's going to cost them to buy it.
Yeah.
And for 2 or 3 years, you have to deal with this bull crap where all people stare at you like, I've never heard of you. You know, you go to the outdoor retail shows, and if you're not North Face or if you're not Patagonia, you're not anybody.
Right. Unless you've got something so unique.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And even that, I mean, we had these guys that were selling these cool chairs next to us. They were chairs made out of, they took like hiking sticks, but they converted into a camp chair.
Oh wow.
And that was an amazing idea, but they still haven't taken off.
Right.
And it's like, you know, even if you have this amazing, cool thing that no one else is doing, it's still so hard to break in. And I think people that have great ideas expect them just to take off. And that's what's so discouraging about starting a business.
Yeah, that's a hard thing.
They jump in, they're like, I'm amazing. This is going to be great. And then you start the GoFundMe or the whatever, and you get 5 people that do it. And then it sits there for 2 months.
Like, how did I not?
Am I not amazing? Yeah.
So this is something that I think is really interesting, and I keep kind of dumbing these questions down because I'm kind of trying to come at this from the standpoint of someone listening who might be thinking about starting a business in a product development kind of business, or is in that. Because as you probably do, we get asked questions a lot, especially by other people that might be at their first trade show, you know, selling a product they came up with when they were in, you know, while they're at school at the university or whatever. So along those lines, what do you think is the most effective way to market your brand? Is by doing what?
Grassroots trade shows.
Trade shows.
I would put all of my money into trade shows.
Right.
I've made lots of mistakes giving my money to marketers and to fake ambassadors and
So basically, taking the product from your hand and putting it in the customer's hand.
Yeah.
Right.
And explaining your story face to face.
Yeah.
And eventually you're going to get people almost like disciples, you know, and I think, you know, our brands, like Andy, for example, came in and I met him at a trade show. He was working your booth and he came over. He's like, these are awesome bags, you know, and he bought them and he was so excited about it. He came back and talked to me some more. And before long, he's like, hey man, I like them so much. I'd like to go show some friends. Could I take some bags? And before long, he's a disciple of Rockagator.
Right. Yeah.
And as you move forward with your brand, you start to get disciples and people that want to promote you, and I don't want to make this sound, but without having to pay them a ton to talk nicely about it, right? You have to pay them to work for you, but like I have to pay, I'm going to pay you $300, but only if you talk nice about Rockagator to all your friends. That you don't have to do that anymore.
Right.
You sell a good product, and you care about people, and before long, people just want to say nice things about your product because they see the utility and they want to tell their friends.
Yeah. Was that surprising to you?
It was.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, because for the first couple of years, like I said, you don't see that. You just see the blank stares because you're so new. But eventually, you start to get a little bit of traction, and I guess kind of the grassroots.
I mean, those are the small little victories we experience, for some start. And there's those disciples. That's what keeps you kind of going in a way. And those are the little victories that you got to take with you along the way.
Right. I mean, you get one retailer that just really loves your stuff, and then he'll come back year after year. And then one day he'll have a competitor or a friend that owns a shop come into his shop, and he'll see that you're selling that, and then he'll be a disciple and say, yeah, you should have this in your shop because this is awesome.
Yeah. Word of mouth is a real thing.
Right. It is. And I mean, it's more valuable than, SEO by 100 miles.
Right.
I spent thousands of dollars on search engine optimization to get traffic to my website, and it was just the biggest waste. It was horse pucky.
And it's a double-edged sword too, because doing shows can be expensive. It's extremely resource heavy.
It is. My accountant flipped his lid. He's like, what is this trade show that you're spending money on? It's like, that's like 20 shows we went to last year, and they're like $1,500 each. He's like, oh, you spend that much on advertising? It's like, yeah.
Yeah. But it's the best kind of advertising.
Yeah. It doesn't get better.
I mean, social media is important and stuff, but social media does not equal dollars.
No.
So
not a lot.
Not a lot. It can. And in certain products it does, but
And there's approach. I mean, we can talk about it later, but continue your thought.
Well, I'm just, it's just interesting in kind of the vein of, people that might be listening and wondering this and that, and these all come from questions that we've been asked over the years. But they're going to trade shows, because I'd never done a trade show before, ever, with anything. And then you go do your first one, and it's nerve-wracking, and it's like, you don't know, because I never thought, I hate salesmen. I don't want to be a salesman, but that's exactly what you have to be. But over time, what you get out of trade shows is not just selling your product. You learn a ton about yourself. You learn how to sell your product. And every time you do one, you learn something new. Plus the people you meet, the opportunities that are there. So if you're a small business or you've got a product, I always tell people, even if it's a farmer's market, go sell it. Go stand in front of people and sell the product is probably the most valuable thing that you can do.
You have to be able to relate and understand that. I mean, like I said, going to the Spartan race, trade shows are the same thing. You go to these shows that are so densely populated with a certain demographic, like a hunting show, for example.
Yeah.
Everybody in there kills animals, right? And they eat them and they love it. And so you go in there and you're like, I didn't grow up. My dad didn't take me hunting. How can I learn about a hunter? Well, go to a trade show and talk to him for 4 days straight until you lose your voice.
Yeah.
You'll know.
You'll know. You'll learn.
You'll know, and you'll know what, triggers them. You'll learn what makes them happy. You'll learn what turns them off, and that way, the next time you come to the show, you know exactly what to say to them.
Yeah, exactly.
So you don't have to be a hunter, but you have to understand them.
Right. You have to be able to speak their language,
right?
Essentially. The thing that's really interesting is that I think, and tell me if you agree or not, but when you say you get people who become brand loyal, right, and they get excited about your brand and stuff, and it's what you have to do as an entrepreneur, and I think you'd probably agree, Eric, is you cannot, because with our primary partners, we've had these discussions early on, you can't always go with the way you think you would interact or how you would view the product is the right way to do it. Because I'm not one that really would get fanatic about certain brands necessarily, where I'm posting stuff online and doing stuff like that. But a lot of people are wired that way.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same. I've never understood that, but there are people that are that way, and there's a lot of them.
Thank God.
Yeah.
Thank God. But do you find that, I think that especially when you're a small business and you're accessible, people can touch you essentially, you get those kind of fans because people want to inherently be a part of something.
Yeah.
They want to be.
You become a little bit, I mean, when you say you're a business owner, and it's not egotistical, but people think that you are kind of a god a little bit. They're like, oh, this guy is a head of a company that sells a cool product.
Right.
I want to be his friend. I want to talk to him. I want to network with him. And it puts yourself in a little bit of a position of responsibility where you have to, meet their expectations. So you have to play the part of, okay, yeah, I want to be your friend, and I am cool. Right. Don't get me wrong. I'm the coolest guy on the block, and this product is great. And so
yeah.
It's you have to become what they think you are a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Eric, what do you think about that in your experience? Like when people find out, that you're, an owner in a business and stuff like that. I mean, would you kind of echo that too?
Yeah, no, I mean, you always met that little bit of shock and awe in a way, that they're surprised and go, oh, you must have your shit together, essentially, is what it feels like.
I got
right?
that a lot in Puyallup at the Sportsman's Expo.
Right.
People walk in, they're like, oh, yeah, this is a cool product. So what do you do? I'm like, I'm the owner. Oh, wow. What an honor. Like, hi, I'm so-and-so. Nice to meet you. And they want to...
You're somehow on this little pedestal all of a sudden.
It takes it to another level.
It does.
And that's why it's always hard to have someone else and go sell your product that you created.
Right.
Is because you need people that, I've always told people, like in Andy, when you're talking about what it is and how it got created, just say we. We did this, we did that. Even though he had no part of that, I would rather people make the assumption that he did because it connects them.
Yeah, it's exactly right.
To it more. So...
Well, in the inverse, he now feels more a part of it and is going to do a better job selling it and more passionate about it.
That's a good point. One of the guys roll in that does it, he always says, well, Randy, the owner, he does this, and Randy, the owner, does that. He kind of diminishes his role in the booth.
Yeah.
I need to tell him.
You should tell him.
Take
what's
ownership.
Weird you bring that up is I don't know that I consciously... because I've been next to you plenty of times and heard Roland, speak like that. And there is something about that scratches the record the wrong way for me, that he should be, presenting that a little bit differently.
Yeah, he should take more ownership.
Yeah,
true.
For sure. So what direction are you thinking about taking things? Like where are you trying to get to with this?
Honestly, I'm just trying to look for different ways that I can create brand relevant products that make sense to be under the umbrella. Does that make sense? So right now, I actually just put down some money on a new production line that's going to be lifestyle backpacks. It's going to be a waxed canvas everyday backpack. So kind of similar. It's going to be it's a really sweet, dual colored wax canvas bag. It's going to have the same kind of Molly webbing or Molly daisy chain webbing down the back. So it's going to, it'll have some visual similarities.
Have an outdoory kind of feel to it.
It'll have visual similarities to the other products that we sell. So, but it's going to be different function where, not everybody the problem with my product that I've run into is a lot of people walk past it and say, oh, I won't ever need that backpack.
Right.
And so I need to come up with a product that someone says, oh, I don't need that one, but this one's really nice. Tell me about this one,
Yep.
and it's a backpack that everybody can wear. A high school kid,
Right.
a old lady that wants to go on a day hike through Zions, whatever,
Well, backpacks in general, for me, I'm a bag Nazi. I know we've had this conversation many times, I'll buy a bag without having any intent behind what I'm going to use it for. It's like pocket knives or, you just got those crowds that just do consume, you know.
Yeah, and so really my main push is to create a, not only have an awesome waterproof bag, because that's part of our identity and that's what, people are starting to recognize us as, but also create something that's vertically integrated into the business model that can also apply to anybody.
Right.
And, create I'm going to have a guy create a different logo for it. So it's going to be Rockagator, but it's going to be a lifestyle Rockagator logo.
Sure.
So
Smart.
It'll be, something separate.
It'll carry the brand
It'll carry
identity.
the brand, but in a different direction.
Right. That's awesome.
That's
so
great. Yeah.
That's the next step is to see if, because my son, he's always coming to me, Dad, I can't wear your Rockagator to school. You can't wear a waterproof backpack to school.
Right.
You need to design a cool, he's got this Decine bag. It's a ski bag. He's like, this is cool. This is awesome. All the kids wear this. You should make this. And he's always telling me how my brand sucks.
Yeah.
And it's hard because it's my kid and I'm like, you don't know how to make money. None of your friends make money. Why should I care what they think?
They
But
know
I
how
should.
to spend money.
Yeah.
I should
Listen to them.
Yeah, they for somehow all these kids get cool things, right?
Yeah.
And so they get money somewhere, and they know what's cool, and so I've been forced to listen to Max quite a bit,
Right.
And he's still hammering me because I'm not letting him design